Okay, there being none, I am going to move over to the first item on our agenda, and this is a special town meeting and a potential vote. So as all of you know, the Board of Selectmen have been working with the building committee to determine a path forward for the Carroll Community Center. A couple of weeks ago, we had I see that Chris Boland has his hand up, so I'm going to finish with this section and then call on him. He may have missed the citizens' comments, so if that's okay with you, Chris? Okay, all right. I'm sorry, I didn't notice your hand if it was up before. So we determined that the path forward would be as follows. The Board of Selectmen would retain an independent company to do a peer review. The goal of the peer review would be simply to identify potential cost savings with respect to the overruns. It was determined from that meeting that the only way the building committee, architect, and OPM could find ways to reduce the cost was to reduce the size. And we determined that that was not what the community had voted for. So a reduction in size was not appropriate. Therefore, we were looking to be able to bring to town meeting options with respect to the cost overruns. And we hope to get some ideas from the peer review, which has begun, and we should have a final report within 3 weeks of today. At that same time, the Board of Selectmen determined that we should, in order to move this project forward as quickly as we possibly could, given the timelines provided by the architect and OPM, it would take 5 months to get ready to go out to rebid, that we should determine when we could hold a special town meeting and put that town meeting on the books, this evening. So we asked the town moderator to attend the meeting with us, as well as the town clerk. The town administrator has had some conversations, and I believe that we have determined the perfect date for which to have the special town meeting. And based upon discussions with the town clerk, we have determined to have the meeting on either Saturday, June 3rd or Saturday, June 10th. And at that meeting, what would be presented was the actual cost to build the building that was voted on at town meeting. And then also what we would be able to present were alternatives, not to the design, but to finishes to help reduce the overage. And the town would vote on both of those options at the meeting. So that's where we stand this evening. So what I would like to do is get comments from the town moderator and the town clerk regarding the proposal for a town meeting, and then get some comments from Mr. Jeffries. Following that, I will have comments from Mr. Boland, and then we can vote on the town meeting proposal. So, Mr. Moderator or Mr. Rapetti.
Okay, thank you, Robin, and thank you and the Board of Selectmen for all their hard work on this, and also Felicia, because as everybody knows, Felicia takes the laboring oar for every town meeting that we have, and it is a lot of work. So thank you. Either date would be fine with me. I think that both dates are also good in terms of school still being in session, so most people will still be in town. The only thing that I would caution is that I think it's very important that the warrant committee have an opportunity to vet all of the issues surrounding the proposal. And therefore, I would propose that we try to have an open hearing by the warrant committee at least 2 weeks before the town meeting. That might suggest that the June 10th meeting would be better, because it would give the warrant committee a chance to sort of regroup after the annual town meeting and acquire additional data that might be available. But I think it's very important, as many of you know, when I'm conducting a town meeting, I like to have all of the issues vetted ahead of time and as much information available to the citizens as possible so that everybody can make an informed decision. So I would strongly encourage you to think about timing for the open hearing with the warrant committee. And then we will have a moderators meeting, which will be a week before whichever date you select, Robin. And at that time, I would like all interested parties to attend the moderators meeting. And essentially, it will be a dress rehearsal. We'll go through the order of presentations, any items that are going to be circulated so that Felicia can arrange to have items copied, photocopied if they're going to be distributed, and also to have all PowerPoints available 1 week before the designated town meeting date so that they can be loaded into the computer and we can make sure that everything's running smoothly. So those are my thoughts. And let me turn over to Dave Havlin, who is really the brains of the operation, to see if he has anything else to add.
Thank you, Jim. That's not quite a true statement, but just to ask that to the best of our ability, town council notwithstanding, that by the moderators meeting, we have the final order of the motions and then the motions in their final state so that we don't have to go through the fire drill that we did last town meeting, where we're literally getting 4 or 5 drafts of motions the day of. So this should be much easier because there should only be 1 or 2 motions, but it's still worth pointing out.
Oh, we'll certainly take that into consideration. Felicia, this town meeting impacts you the most. So do you have a preference or any concerns about what's been discussed so far?
I don't have any concerns. We absolutely have to go forward. And Jim, I'm sorry, June 10th is not going to work because there's already something up there. So our date is going to be June 3rd. And I've arranged to hold on it, and I've arranged to make sure that the clickers will be available to us as well.
Thank you. So June 3rd it is. Mr. Jeffries, do you have any comments? You're on mute.
I put it on mute so we could definitely identify that the construction noise that we were hearing, Robin, was coming from under your table. That the beast that just has shown himself behind you was making all that noise. So
Right, he was gnawing on his antler.
Exactly. So Felicia, the 3rd will throw massive monkey wrenches into exactly what Jim and Dave just mentioned. You'll not have enough time between annual town meeting to get all the things that Jim and Dave just spoke to.
How, even if we plan ahead of time and work with Warren, we need to get this meeting scheduled sooner rather than later. So, Felicia, is there a way to get all the logistics worked out? I know it's a tight crunch. It is over a month.
I think that you gave a couple of choices, June 3rd, June 10th. The only date available to us is June 3rd. If we want to go ahead and we want to do this in June, then it's incumbent on all of us as a team to make it work. Or you have to find some other date, and I don't think that's viable.
Right.
So
Current bid
we have to
schedule,
make it work.
I just add, Robin, the current bid schedule that's been outlined by the project team brings us in around April. And so, I think that, that's a few good months, right, to be able to get the motions finalized, get everything put together, and then have a hearing with the warrant committee.
Right.
But Chris, what Jim just said is warrant committee, then moderators meeting, and then a warrant committee open meeting, a moderators meeting, with, as Jim just described, essentially a rough run through, if you will. So that'd be at least one meeting every week. Is that right?
We'd have about approximately 2 months time between having the figures, so that would just get put into the motion. The motions, I would also say, most of that work has already been done from the initial meeting. So all it would be doing is really inserting the updated number. So the town would have about approximately 8 weeks to be able to conduct moderators meetings, warrant committee hearings, and the like.
And if there's any slippage, then there's enough time for that as well.
By that, you mean, Robin, enough overlap between the regular town meeting and the special town meeting?
Right, as Felicia said, this is a very important issue for the town, so it's incumbent upon all of us to make this work. June 10th doesn't work, so I see no other option but to make June 3rd work. And we're just gonna have to map everything out and make sure that we have the moderators meeting set, that the warrant committee open hearing is set, that warrant committee knows that they need to plan for this ahead of time. As Chris said, we should have 2 months to prepare everything so we can get the word out, educate the town. And Chris, there is no risk of those bids going stale, right? That's the other thing. I want to make sure that there's
We put in the contract language that bids will be held for 90 days. I'm sorry.
okay. Thank you.
And Chris, what's the 90-day due date?
Just that the bids will be recognized and are valid for 90 days. So all the contractors who bid on the project essentially have to
Hold their pricing.
hold their pricing for those 90 days.
Right. But when will we have those in hand?
5 months from the date that the Board of Selectmen votes for the building team, committee, whomever, to move forward with bidding the project.
Okay. And we determined the earliest at our last meeting, I believe we determined the earliest that could be is the second week of January, correct?
No, we have November 17th on the books for the board meeting for the review, discussion, and a potential vote based on the peer review documents.
Right.
So the peer review documents should be received by the board in early November, the first week of November. And that gives you about a week to 2 weeks to be able to disseminate those, read through those, digest them, and then have a meeting on November 17th. I would also say that November 17th is just on the board's regularly scheduled meetings. Doesn't preclude you from scheduling a special meeting at any time to address the matter in November.
Okay.
Right. And we were, as soon as the vote was taken, we immediately contacted the Bardman, the architect conducting the peer review. We got the contract in place as soon as we possibly could. They've started work already. The OPM created a data room for them. They've had access to the data room, and we expect the peer review just to provide us with a roadmap to assist us with looking at various items that could, should the town choose, reduce the overage. Again, I want to emphasize, we are not contemplating reducing the size of the building or the scope of the building. We are trying to find ways to reduce the overage by potentially changing certain finishes on the exterior of the building that are driving up the price. And we were able to determine that by looking at the square foot pricing at Pembroke and Sudbury versus that for Dover. We're also looking at the design of the fire system. So these are all things that will not impact in any way the size nor the programming space of the building. It's just ways to reduce some of those costs that are some of those design features that are driving up the overall cost.
Got it. So Robin, do you want to go to Chris Bolin and Dave? Both Chris and Chris and Dave have raised their hands.
Sure. Well, Chris has been waiting patiently, so we should let him go first.
Thanks. I lower my hand. Thanks, Robin and John. I think a couple of questions just for clarification. The process you mentioned, I just want to make sure I understand. You're going to rebid, just tell me yes or no, like if I'm off base, but you're going to rebid the design that was approved at the June 2021 special town meeting exactly. And that's going to happen in an adequate amount of time that after 5 months, you'll hold a town meeting and that'll sync up with your June 3rd proposed meeting date. Right. And that'll be a firm bid, so there won't need to be an override risk after that meeting because we'll be working with real numbers and people will be asked in that meeting to vote on real numbers.
Correct.
And then after that, the plan is to immediately, if let's say that the rebid is approved by the town, the override is approved by the town. It'll be an override. It'll be approved by the town. That you would immediately begin construction, or I don't know what immediate is. I mean, the builder, the people doing the bid will have to tell us what the timing is. But my big assumption here from previous meeting is that we're going to be in time to move in prior to the winter of 20. So I got this right, 24.
So that's the goal. What I can do is I can ask the OPM to just kind of put together a timeline of how quickly they could start, what it means, because I'm not sure myself either. So why don't I do that, and we can publish his draft timeline.
That'd be great. And is that part? Will they do that as part of the peer review, like part of your deliverable on November 17th?
I can ask the OPM to do that for us now. I will ask him if he could do it now or if he wanted to wait. You know, I would think it's a standard building schedule, like he would be able to know, but I am making assumptions. I am not a contractor. So
yeah, that's what these are really my questions for you, if you would, to ask them that when they present, and am I right that November 17th is when they're going to present the peer review? Okay, so November 17th, you're going to have essentially the review itself, possible recommendations for modifications to again, it'd be all directional, nothing would be firm, but they'd give you some ideas. And also a rough timeline that we could also expect once the bid, the rebid is submitted.
Right. Well, the OPM has told us 5 months, and so we will. You know, he hasn't changed that. He's sticking to that. Both he and the architect say they can turn it around. You know, what the peer review is going to do is to give us ideas of things that we can look at that might be alternatives to drive down the cost overruns. Okay.
And then again, being sensitive to that risk of a third year out of the space, if the OPM, if the peer review comes back with substantial recommended changes and it can make substantial savings, let's say, and you're still rebidding the existing approved design at June of 23, the only thing you'll be able to go to construction with is the existing design. So are you going to, if they come back with substantial enough recommendations, are you going to have a second bid in place for the June 3rd town meeting?
So my thought process is there will not be a substantial redesign of the building. The things that they would look at are, you know, different exterior finishes that may potentially reduce the cost. You know, there's nothing, it's just figuring out how much those could reduce the cost by. It's cost per square foot. You know, looking at, you know, maybe there are ways to to think about that flat section of the roof, maybe a slight pitch to it may allow us to use different materials that will reduce the cost. So we do not anticipate a huge redesign of the building. Our goal is to get to town meeting in June.
So I get that's helpful, but my question, I guess, and I know little to nothing about construction bidding.
So
is-
I don't either, Chris.
Right.
So
Well, I guess, but the question is, if they make one change to the rebid of the existing design, I don't know that they can go to construction with that. Like if everybody approved that one change, let's say you change the exterior from brick to wood, I'm not sure they can go right to work on that. Like that, they would have to then do more work to change the bid, which would be more time. So that would be another thing just to understand from the OPM. You don't know either, but if you could ask them if there are changes that are approved at the June town meeting, how does that affect the timeline for construction?
okay. I mean, the bottom line is we're going to town meeting June 4th. So if the override, if the overage as designed doesn't pass, we will have already identified, worst case, certain things that we could do to reduce that overage cost. So I am hopeful that we will be able to provide a number, maybe not the final number, but a number by which we could reduce the cost with a schematic of what the exterior may look like.
Okay, so it sounds like your plan is for your first article to be up or down vote on an override to the existing design. If
Right,
it passes,
for approval of the overage, right?
so if that passes, you will dismiss the second motion, and that'll be the end of the meeting. If it doesn't pass, then you'll go to the second motion and vote if people want to make changes.
Right.
And if neither one of them passes, then it's back to the drawing board.
Well, one of them has to pass. I mean,
Well, but that,
right. Hopefully, right.
okay, that's very helpful. Thank you very much. That was all the questions I had.
And if I misspoke in any way based upon my lack of knowledge and my oversimplification of design, construction design, I will make note of that and let everybody know that I was wrong.
David?
Well, thank you. I just quickly, when I put my hand up, we were talking about calendar. So may I ask a quick question of Felicia or anyone who might know? The regular town meeting, the first Monday is May the 1st, right? So is that when the regular town meeting is?
Yes.
Super.
Yes.
So that then gives us, in still giving some respect and respite to the warrant committee. So if we have the regular on the 1st and then the open warrant on the 15th, that still gives 2 weeks for us. So you could even have the open warrant the week of the 22nd. And then Jim, we could go the following week and we can get this in.
Right. I think it's all doable, and the fact that we know this 9 months ahead of time, we can plan for it.
Right. But I just wanted to say that I still think we can do June 3rd and still have time.
Okay, so with that, I think I'm gonna make a motion. I move to call a special town meeting on June 3rd, 2023 for the purpose of voting on the community center building project.
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
I, John Jeffries.
Thank you. Thank you, Felicia. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jim Rapetti and Dave and Chris Boland. Appreciate your questions, and I'm glad to have this on the calendar.
Thank
Don't
you.
anybody book any vacations.
Exactly. I was just thinking that. No
No
business
wedding,
trips, no
No
vacations.
anniversaries, no nothing, no celebrations of any kind.
Graduations, how about those?
No graduations. Postpone
Move
them.
your birthday,
Move your
whatever it
birthday.
is.
Wait, isn't there Mother's Day in there? Maybe there's got to be. There's got to be Mother's Day. And can we keep that? All right, we'll keep that.
All right. Okay, so the next item of, thank you, everybody. The next item of business is item 1.2, and that is the Comcast cable license agreement. And I've been doing this for too many years because I'm pretty sure we've done this before. So I believe that it's Dover Cable's license with Comcast expires at the end of the year. And our favorite attorney, our favorite Comcast attorney, or Bill Solomon, is here tonight, and he's going to talk to us about the renewal of the license. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Bill. You need to take yourself off mute.
Okay, that's better. Thank you. It's good to be here. Thank you, Madam Chair, and then board members. So I provided a summary of the license, but it's been provided to Comcast. We had reached a deal in principle, and I provided the license to Greg Franks, the government affairs manager for Comcast, who's really one of the great ones at the company. It's cares a lot about local issues, local needs, familiar with municipalities, and does a great job for his company, but he understands that you can have a win-win in these licenses. So I provided the license, and I expect, depending on the timing, I might get it back as early as next week. But the basic parameters of the deal have been reached through the work of the negotiating team with the former project manager, who's primary worker on this, and then taken over by Chris, and with help from Mike Klein, who's the executive director, as you know, of Dover Sherman Community Television. So I'll just briefly go over the terms. And we thought this was an opportunity to get ahead of the game. We're still going to have a public proceeding going forward, and you'll have the document, but we thought this was a good chance to make sure everything's on the right track. So the term would be for 10 years. From January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2032. But a chart of the subscribers in town, there are currently 714 Comcast subscribers in Dover, 792 Verizon, as of December 31st, 2021. The PEG access, public educational government access support, the franchise fee, continues to be 5% of gross revenues, and that's the maximum allowed under the federal law, Cable Act. They don't quite pay the full 5%. There are some things that count toward the 5% cap. So when they pay the quarterly payments, they'll pay a tad under 5% for the PEG support, because there's a few other minor costs at this point. The licensing fee, for instance, that goes to the town and the state, $1.30 per subscriber each year. The PEG capital dollar amount is $125,000 that I put down here. That's the old one. I'm sorry, I got the wrong thing, but $125,000, and that's going to be paid as $12,500 a year. Each year. It means the company doesn't amortize it. There's no interest. They charge their subscribers. We're going to continue to have three PEG access channels, the public, educational, and government. But in addition to that, we're going to get a high definition channel. The time period hasn't yet been set. We're still negotiating that. I believe in the draft, I think I have 20 months. I'm just looking to misplace this, but 20 months. Now, one of the issues that I noted on the outline is that Comcast now has been seeking to have the right to take back a standard definition PEG access channel in the lower tier when they provide a high definition PEG access channel. I've tried to stay away from that. but the government affairs people on their side getting a lot of pressure on it. So the thing I'd like to negotiate, the position that I'll recommend to the negotiating team, is that there be a period of time after the provision of the high definition channel, whereby the standard definition channel would still continue, so that it's not one comes, the other leaves at the same time. So I believe that's a reasonable position to take for the town and protects the interests of the public. But I'll discuss that with the negotiating team, and we'll try to work that out with Comcast. But we don't think it's appropriate that that the moment the high definition channel comes, that's a channel that the town and all towns in Massachusetts have waited for many years. That very moment, after having waited for years to get to this point of a license that provides for a high definition channel, and then waiting another 14 months, 20 months to get the high definition channel, we don't think it's appropriate that at that very moment the standard definition channel should move on. In addition to the high definition channel, the existing standard definition channels remaining will be upgraded to what's called serial digital interface, SDI. SDI is a more advanced form of cable casting. It's based on transmitters and encoders. It's light over the fiber. That'll improve both the sound and the picture quality of the standard definition channels, and that would be done at the same time. We agreed in negotiation that in exchange for that, the town, through this license, the funding of this license, would provide up to $7,000 for the cost of those encoders, but Comcast would be responsible, and transmitters. Comcast would be responsible for the repair, the maintenance, and if necessary, the replacement of those electronic pieces of equipment. In addition to that, the PEG access video return will continue from the school where the studio is located, 9 Junction Street, Dover Sherburne High School, and continue to have live cable casting from there, either programming that is at the high school or is aggregated, is brought there, and that'll continue. And that's a fiber link that is that connects Verizon to the high school. In addition to that, there's the cable service to public buildings. That's an issue that's been affected by the FCC's in-kind consideration order, where the FCC, after at the petition of some telecommunication companies, after 40 years, they were shocked to find out that everyone was doing it wrong, and they never said anything about it. And they argued and held that there are certain non-PEG capital costs, non-capital costs, that count toward the 5% franchise fee cap. Since we're at 5%, if something were to count against the cap, there would be a reduction in the franchise fee payment. One of those examples, really, I think the only one Comcast at one point felt it might need to pursue, because the FCC argues they can't waive this, is the cable service to public buildings, municipal buildings and schools. Now, the FCC held that the cost they could attribute to the franchise fee is the market value of those things. And this market value doesn't really have much relation to what they provide to the town. And thankfully, the appeals court, while upholding the FCC in other respects, held that based on a Massachusetts argument, that the market cost was not a reasonable cost that to attribute to a service that's provided. They should attribute their real marginal cost, what it really cost them. So it won't be very much, but as a result, my recommendation that and the negotiating committee is comfortable with, and what I do really every location, certainly every town, certainly where the town has 5% of gross revenues, is not to put that provision in the license. But rather than make it a legal matter, Comcast, I believe, will continue to provide cable service to public buildings. And they understand the argument that when they first came to town, they offered this on their behalf. No one broke their leg to do it, and they're proud of offering it. And basically, if Comcast seeks to attribute a cost to that, that would go against your 5% franchise fee. One, we can see what the cost is, and two is we can make the argument, and you can have them at the meeting, that we believe that their provision of this as consideration to get in the right of way is such that it's a little unseemly to charge Jimmy and Sally for cable service they've been providing for 40 years across the Commonwealth and in Dover. So I think it's better addressed as a good faith issue, because frankly, Comcast is a company that cares about its reputation, that tries to do the right thing, that comes to localities and meets and works things out. As I say, if you ask Google or Facebook or someone to come to town, they want Comcast is here, and they're a good partner for the town. So we think they'll continue to be a good partner on this issue, and we're better off to deal with it on that level rather than on a legal level. The extension of the system remains what it is. I think everywhere in Dover is currently served by the Comcast cable system. But if there was an area that came about that needed to be served, the line extension policy continues to require that there be 10 dwelling units per aerial mile or 20 dwelling units per underground mile. As density requirements go, that's a very low density requirement. Of course, most of you, if you have single family residential homes in Dover, it's not high density. And so we think that's a good place to be. That doesn't mean that Comcast wouldn't build out to any other location that might come about. It just means that they're legally required to go to these homes, and they can make a business decision. So we think that's a fine place to be for Dover. The standard installation, the distance between the road and where cable goes by, and the home that gets a standard installation price to install cable rather than based on some other market factors, is 150 feet. And that's 150 feet, both aerial and underground. Let me just take a look at that 1 second. 150 feet aerial and underground. They'll continue to be a senior discount. The senior discount that Comcast provides is not a lot. It's voluntary. That towns are not allowed under federal law to require a senior discount once rate setting was removed 25 years ago. Most companies do not provide, cable companies do not provide a senior discount. Comcast does, but it's a modest senior discount at best. $2 off of their digital starter or extra, what used to be called expanded basic. It has basic and things like CNN, ESPN, and other channels like that. And it requires a financial qualification. However, the financial qualification we have in Dover and will have going forward has a broader area of qualification. It includes such things as mass fuel assistance, or to be under the state property tax exemption for elderly individuals who qualify based on assets and income. And so it's the best in the state, but that's what they do, and that's up to them if they want to change that. Finally, we'll be about the sixth community to have the leading letter in the state on what's sort of the hottest issue in cable service for communities and for access corporations. It's the electronic program guide. As you know, cable has electronic program guides, but PEG programming is not listed on that. And so Comcast is working on that, as I understand. These things take a long time. I sometimes compare them to the Framingham Heart Study, right, 30 years. But they're working on it, and they agreed. And I think this would not have happened but for Greg Franks really pushing for it on his end. They've agreed to this date, the best letter in the state, that says that they'll if they do it somewhere else, or even if they don't, they'll come over the first 6 years. They'll come and meet with the board and discuss not only the financial and technical feasibility, with what other letters use to state, but to discuss providing that electronic program guide so people can use that guide to record program going forward. They can use it to know what PEG access programming comes up when by just using their television. And I'm fully confident that given Comcast's approach to high definition, that with that letter, if Comcast were to roll out the electronic program guide as part of its license renewal process, be it a year, 2 years, 3 years, I'm fully confident that with that letter, we'll be able to have Comcast here, and they would provide that same service to the town of Dover. So that's a plus. Finally, the license is on the high end of protecting the interests of the town, the financial and the legal interest. We've made sure that everything's straightforward. The definition of gross revenue upon which the 5% applies, it's a full definition. It doesn't have any arbitrary exclusions. There are excellent public works provisions, including on issues like undergrounding, which can be very important. And also, it does not include, this was something that we've been able to maintain through my office, does not include any language that gives the cable operator any rights after going forward. If they were to change the nature of their service, what they have here is a cable license. And just as the cable company wants to make sure that that license only addresses cable service and the cable system, we similarly want to make sure that that license provides rights for cable service and cable system. It doesn't address other issues. So we both agree on that, the company and the town, and we have a license that reflects the fact that it's cable service that's being addressed here and not other services. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So thank you. That was a very comprehensive overview of the lease renewal, and I appreciate it. I don't have any questions. I think some of the open items that you have indicated make sense to me on the lease. I appreciate all you've done for the town, and I really don't have any additional comments. John?
Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. So, Bill, I know we've been through this before, and some of this is things that we have knowledge of, and Robin and I, obviously, with your presentations in the past, we know some of these things that a lot of people at home, you just went right over their head. You went over their head like a jet plane went over their head. So I'm just gonna drill down on a couple of things.
Sure.
There are going to be things that you said that just come second nature to you, that people have no idea what we're talking about. And because, as I said, we've done this in the past, we have a little bit of knowledge. I'll speak for myself of what these things are. So quickly.
But we also have the benefit of being able to read the summary ahead of time, along with the proposed lease renewal.
Exactly.
It helps a lot.
Yeah, and it helps that it's the third time we've read the summary for some of these things, or maybe even the fourth time. So Bill, just quickly, again, mostly this is just for clarification for people at home. No pun intended with the clarification. Yeah. But with regards to just very quickly tell people what's the difference between the high definition, what you called the standard channel. So obviously, adding a high def, taking away the other is something that they are doing. But just very quickly, tell people what the difference between the high def and the standard are, other than sound and picture quality. And
sure, the main difference.
You look older, John, on
yes,
high def.
Thank you, John, and I appreciate that. And I was gearing it to you more than the public, so thank you.
So
the
nice
main
of you,
difference.
Bill. You have such a generous, kind heart, Bill. You know, that's so nice of you to do that.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's a
Sarcasm.
long relationship in the town. The main difference is the location. The standard definition channels, I'm forgetting, but 8, 9, 19, they're the low part of the channel numbers. So that if you're down there, where lots of people, particularly seniors or and others, watch their TV, as opposed to high definition. It's nice to have them where they've been and where they are, and have it at the lower part of the channel spectrum. When you go to high definition, you're up in the thousands. So for people who watch high definition, they're used to be in the thousands of channel numbers.
Right.
And then secondly, there are some people who don't have cable-ready TVs. And at the moment, Comcast provides a free device that lets them, would allow them to get the channels in the digital and the HD spectrum. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to do it from their home.
Do people know about that, Bill? Like, how do we share that with our constituents?
Well, good point. And I think we can speak to Greg Franks, and we could have a dual approach to that. Both the town and the company could get that word out. Now, it may be in certain communities, almost everyone has a cable-ready TV because they've been making those for many years now. So there may not be a lot of people, but it's important. So I can speak to Mr. Franks, and I could discuss that, and could see how we could get the firmer information for what they do. I deal with this more in the western part of the state, which is a different division than here. I assume the policies are similar, but they may be a little different. So I will take the lead on that, find out some of the details, and then discuss with Greg how we could have a process of letting the public know about that opportunity. But all the more reason to when HD comes, not to have a momentary transition. And we'll say this, that the way I've written the agreement, it allows Comcast to get a channel back, but it doesn't say they have to, and it doesn't say, it will happen unless they ask. So there's a chance they just might say, well, they have enough bandwidth, which I think they do for their other purposes, and they really don't need the SD channel back for PEG access in order to deal with what their bandwidth issues are. So there's a few levels there, but I'll take the lead on that, and I'll report back.
Do we know if anybody is qualifying for the discount? Do we have any idea of knowing how many of the 714 Comcast or the 792 Verizon customers are qualifying for a discount?
We don't. Oftentimes, even a generic number sometimes viewed by a cable company is either a privacy matter or a proprietary matter for them. Privacy for subscribers, although how would the number affect that really, as you say, or proprietary for them. So we don't have that, and my guess is obviously there are some communities where it's going to be much higher. And I also should say that to Comcast credit, they provide this discount, but I don't think they don't advertise it in a very public way. So I think in some respects, rather than find out who has it, it may be more helpful together with what we're talking about for a device to allow someone to see the digital channel, is to see if they and the town, and we can do this on a website, the senior center, other places, could publicize the availability of the discount so people could get that.
I think that'd be very helpful because, there are many things that you've talked to us in the past about discounts and availability and things that the seniors or other people may who fall into those who qualify for it would like to have. And we are facing the problem daily of how do we share this information? How do we disseminate the information to people who would qualify to get it so they even know that they qualify and they get it? So that would be very helpful. Last thing for me And again, just very, very quickly, you mentioned $7,000 up to $7,000 that we would have to pay for a relay device. How many relay devices could we potentially have to pay for?
Oh, well, that would be the total cost. I mean, typically, and we'll be discussing it with them on the technological side. Typically, the transmitter only goes into the studio. In fact, that's where and it's just because I should say this, they pick up at the studio, but there's also a fiber line. I didn't say this, a fiber line connecting the townhouse to the studio. So the signal from the townhouse will continue to go over Comcast fiber to the studio, and then they pick up the signal at the studio. At the studio, they'll have a transmitter, and so they have an encoder at another location, and the total cost of that would be $7,000. So and there would be no other equipment. They'd be responsible. In my view, that the transmission is their business. They're in the cable business. The town's not. The Access Corp isn't in the transmission business. So while I theoretically disagree that there should be a cost there for the town, there are a few things that warrant agreeing to their perspective here. One is $7,000 in the scheme of all the dollars, because we have a good capital payment here, is a lower amount, particularly as these things go. Secondly, they are taking responsibility to maintain, repair, and replace that transmitter and encoder, so that I think the $7,000 warranted. It may be less than that. It can't be more. And I think it's the better part of the back and forth to let them prevail on their view of who should be responsible for a transmitter. And that view, by the way, comes from the fact that over about 15 years, they were able to succeed in many locations of making the Access Corp or the town responsible for the modulator, which is the same device, but not using fiber and light, using analog. And so I think with that, they sort of like this idea that the town would pay for these transmitters. But here, I think the practicality of the total license, particularly given the fact it's a fair PEG capital payment. It's a good PEG capital payment of $125,000 that reflects their knowledge of what Dover, what cable needs, what community television means to Dover. So I think the totality will be okay, and that's a maximum for all of the transmitters in the.
Robin, would you like a motion, or would you? Are we just going to accept the recommendations, the summary?
Well, at this point, up to you. We're still going to finalize negotiation, but if you took some sort of vote about support, that'd be helpful. Thank you,
Chris.
I just wanted to clarify and have an opportunity at the outset to just mention that this is the introductory kind of overview for the board and for the public, as required to the process we have on the board schedule at your next meeting in 2 weeks when you would officially vote for the agreement. So there is technically no motion needed this evening.
Right, but we certainly support the direction in which the renewal is going. So.
And that feedback is very helpful.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Bill.
you, Mr. Jeffries, Ms. Hunter. Thank you. See you in 2 weeks, hopefully. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Finally, I get a break. The next article on the agenda, and the next item is 1.3, and it's the West Suburban Health Group disclosure of financial interest and potential vote. And again, I remember this. I believe we do it annually. Go ahead, Chris.
Thanks. We do this annually. This is just the financial disclosure from myself and from the town's treasurer, Jerry Lane, just stating that we have a financial interest in the matters in which we vote on as members of the West Suburban Health Group Board, given that we pay for and are provided health insurance through the town, and we're voting on matters related to that. The law requires us that we file this each year. Just a simple form that checks the box, so to speak.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to make the suggested motion. I move to approve pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 268A, Section 19, the exemption of Jerry Lane and Chris Dwelly interests in serving on the Board of Directors and/or Steering Committee of the West Suburban Health Group, as their interests are not so substantial as to be deemed likely to affect the integrity of the services which the municipality may expect from its employees.
Seconded, John Jeffries.
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Aye, John Jeffries.
All right. Thank you, Chris and Jerry, for doing this for us. The next item of business is to reappoint Alan Fryer to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2025. I don't even recall how long Alan has been on the Board of Appeals, but we're certainly lucky to have him be a member. You know, he's done a lot of great things for the town. So thank you, Alan, for accepting this reappointment. And with that, I would make a motion. I move to reappoint Alan Fryer to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a 3-year term ending on June 30th, 2025.
Seconded, John Jeffries.
All in favor? Aye, Robin Hunter.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Thank you again, Alan. Really appreciate it. So the next item of business is just board updates. So I don't know if you had a chance, John, to look at the upcoming agendas and if you have any comments.
No comments. I have had a chance to look at the November 3rd and November 17th. Obviously, a big part of our conversation this evening was the November 17th meeting. So I think we are going to have 2 very fun-filled, action-packed upcoming meetings, the 3rd and the 17th.
Right. And then as far
I do have to make one comment on December 1st. Thursday, December 1st. Can you please have a conversation with Chris and Chris with Mona about our December 1st meeting? I guess I have to completely disclose this. I have tickets to the Patriots game on Thursday evening, December 1st. They're playing the Buffalo Bills at 7 o'clock at Fox.
So are you inviting us all? That's so nice, John. We'll do the meeting there. Thank you for offering.
You're not going to participate remotely?
Yeah, 73,000 screaming fans on the Buffalo game. So, yikes.
Would you like us to try and reschedule?
If we could schedule maybe for Wednesday, Chris, or earlier in the day, maybe in the morning, if that works. It doesn't, I know we have a lot to cover on the 3rd and the 17th, but the 1st is a fairly light meeting. But
Right, I could certainly do the Wednesday. The mornings are really difficult for me. So
okay.
We'll look for Wednesday and send a note out to the members to determine a time. I will say, just as it relates to that, while the 1st right now is pretty light, there's been a couple of things this past week that will require us to move the next couple of meetings. So for instance, we presently have the Board of Selectmen operating budget review scheduled for November 17th. That's going to have to get shifted to December 1st. And we've also talked about a couple, we've got the ad for the community center. So it's just to say, we'll look for a date for that Wednesday so that you can keep a meeting on the.
right, just an FYI, the following week I'm going to be out of the country. So
The first week of December?
Yeah.
The December 5th?
that whole week.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that consideration, Chris. Mona, Kate.
James.
As far as, well, yeah, I'm waiting for my invitation. As far as for being so accommodating,
It's going to be cold, Robin. You're not. I don't think you're going to like that night.
I don't know. That's going to be a really good game.
It's going to be a really good.
Buffalo. I hate to say this, Buffalo's really good.
Yes, yes, they are.
So at least it's not in Buffalo. It could be a lot colder.
Correct.
Oh, all of my updates I actually gave right at the beginning of the meeting. Chris and I have been spending a lot of quality time together on finding ways to move the Carroll Community Center forward. So we've had a lot of good conversations. I really appreciate him jumping on the peer review, and we got that done really quickly. So I think we're making good progress there.
Yeah, thank you both for that. That's I agree with that. So thank you.
Do you have any updates, John?
No, nothing from my side, Robin. There's, Chris will touch base with regards to Hale, where we have continued the dialogue with Westwood, where we have opened the dialogue in combination with Westwood and Hale. So I know Chris will speak to that in his update. So there's really not a whole lot to add over and above what we've been discussing in the past.
Okay, great. So then, Chris, I'm going to move it over to you. Item 1.6.
All right. Yep, Hale's a perfect segue. So I won't expound upon John's comments related to our work with Westwood, but the latest update I do have for the board is that Eric Arnold had reached out and he is looking to schedule some time before the board to give the board kind of a general update about Hale Education's plans and their timing of things. This doesn't necessarily relate to the particulars of the draft agreement that we've been discussing, but it's more of an opportunity for Hale to just give the full board kind of an update of what their thinking is as it relates to their future. So it looks like November 3rd works pretty good for them. So Robin, when you and I meet on Monday, we can talk about that, but
okay.
our plan is to slide that in to November 3rd.
Okay.
And then just wanted to let the board know that the police department and the highway department and the fire department have been working with, and Carl Warnock, our water superintendent, have been working with Aquarian for the main upgrade work that is occurring on, Normandy, off of Walpole. So there'll be plenty of public communication well in advance before that work commences, so that the abutters know what's happening and can make appropriate plans. And then wanted to let you know that the state just approved our match for our culvert work on Willow Street and Dedham Street. So the feasibility work that's needed at those two locations will be beginning in the next few weeks. And so as a reminder, that's just kind of the first phase of a 3-phase effort to replace the Willow Street and Dedham Street culverts. So next phase would be the final design, permitting, and then we go to construction.
Chris, can I just ask one thing about the project on Breton Road and Normandy?
Yeah.
And Carl, probably this is more directed at you. When you come out of Breton Road onto Walpole, you can't see the traffic coming. It's really, really a bad intersection. Is there anything while we're there, while there's a lot of construction in that area, is there anything that has been considered or discussed with regard to that intersection?
I can speak for Kevin on behalf of the highway department. I know that there's been a large focus this fall about identifying areas where there's line of sight issues and
Yeah.
to kind of break that back as long as it's related to natural vegetation and things like that. So, I can just flag that particular location for him, both get an update and see what potentially can be done or what further can be done.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And then just want to let the board know that all the capital budgets have been submitted and sent over to the chair of the capital budget committee so that they can start their review process. We've taken all that data and started to put it into our projections and our worksheets that we use for budgeting. And then also the operating budget guidance was issued yesterday. So that process has started. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the board should expect to see the Board of Selectmen operating budgets, as well as the general budget overview that I provide the board. I guess it would be November 30th now.
Great.
And those are the top hits for this week.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, I was still on mute. So last on the agenda is our consent agenda, and the consent agenda consists of the award for distillate fuel oil bid to Holliston Oil, approval of 2022 special one-day liquor licenses for November 2nd, 7th, December 10th, 12th, and 19th, and approval of the March 31st, April 28th, May 12th, and May 26th, 2022 open session meeting minutes. So thank you, Mona. For the minutes, they were great. So I am going to make a motion to move the approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Seconded, John Jeffries.
All in favor? I, Robin Hunter.
I, John Jeffries.
All right. And that concludes our meeting for this evening. So I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Robin, for the first time in your 22-year career as selectman, you have beaten the time by 4 minutes. You've gone under the allotted time by 4 minutes. I'm very proud of you.
You should thank Chris for his rigid prep.
I'm sure
Turning the clock, we're getting close to it.
Mona and Kate and Carl all thank you as well.
John
Seconded.
made a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Seconded.
Are you going to second that motion?
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor? I, Robin Hunter.
I, John Jeffries.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Appreciate all your help. Thanks a lot.